There are many ways to make 4-patch blocks. I'm going to show you my method for making a fast 4-patch and how to twist the back seam so that all the seams are going in the same direction, which reduces bulk in the back of the block. Now, I know there's lots of ways to make 4-patches. One is you sew 2 strips together and you cut them into sections. I prefer cutting the squares individually. It doesn't take any more time because even when you're sewing the 2 fabrics together in a strip, you still have to cut them apart and then sew them together. So I prefer to cut my squares at once, and the best way to do that is to take your 2 fabrics. I've got 2 different color fabrics here. I lay them right sides together, and then I'm going to cut my my squares with the fabrics together. And so I'm going to cut. I want to make sure I have a start with a straight edge here. Okay, so I've got that one ready to go, and then I have one more to cut. So I've got my 2 different fabrics together. Okay, so now I have my 4 blocks. Now you can't see them, but you've got both of them. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn one upside down. And I'm going to sew one right after the other with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, so I'm going to sew one, and I'm going to stop with my needle down. No, that's not my needle down. There's my needle down. It's a new sewing machine. I'm just learning it. Okay, and then I'm going to put the other one right next to it. It's touching it. Okay, and I'm going to sew the next one right after it. And I'm going to cut my threads. Now the trick is I'm not going to take these apart. I'm going to leave this just like that, and then I'm going to press these in opposite directions. So I'm going to press the first one towards the dark, and I'm going to press the second one towards the dark. And I'm just finger pressing. Okay, and then all I have to do is flip, and then I'm going to sew it together. Now, because I sewed one right after the other, the seams are already touching each other. They're abutted, and they're going in opposite directions, so I know my seam's going to match now. So I'm just going to put a pin right in front of that seam allowance, just so that it holds that seam together when I go to sew it. You don't have to. Some people don't do that, but I still like to add a little pin there. So I'm just going to put a pin there. I'm going to sew those pairs together at my 1/4 inch. Cut my thread. Okay, so now, the machine was making a little tight stitch here. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I have to clip that little thread that was holding it together because I want to twist this seam in the back. So I have to just clip this one little thread. Okay, and the way to get that seam to twist is I stick my fingers into where the seams are coming together, just like this, and I give it a little twist. And what it does is it pulls those threads apart, and if they don't come apart, you can always take your little seam ripper and give it a little extra. So see, there's couple little threads that want to stick together. So I just give them a little clip, and you can see I can get those seams going in opposite directions. So I turn it over to the front, I give it another press, and you can see how nice that seam matches perfectly because I sewed it one right after the other, so there's no way it can't match. And because the seams are all going in the same direction, and that seam is pressed open in the back, or pressed around in the circle in the back, you have a nice flat seam in the center, and it makes a quick 4-patch. So try this method. You're not going to believe how easy it is.